So tonight we're going to switch from Acts for just a little while, and we're going to talk about the Ark of the Covenant. And so, can you hand these out? It's something that I think even non-believers are interested in, the Ark of the Covenant, because some think it has magical powers. I mean, if you saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, and then Hitler was really searching for it because he thought if he had the Ark of the Covenant that he would win all of his wars. But anyway, there's no magic there. It's the power of God. That's what it is. And that's more powerful than any magic. So, the Ark of the Covenant is also called the Ark of the Lord. It's called the Ark of God, the Ark of the Testimony. And so what we're going to talk about tonight, and maybe next week too, because I don't think we can finish it all tonight, is what is the purpose of the Ark of the Covenant, and what does it represent? And then what does it contain? And why does it contain the things that it contains? So, yes.
Is it here? Is it here in the world, or did God take it with?
You're asking the $1 million question. We're going to get to that next week, because today we're going to talk about the Ark, and then next week we're going to talk about what happened to the Ark, its travels, and where it ended up, and where it was last seen, and where it could possibly be today. That's a big question. So, God told Moses when he was on Mount Sinai, which is in the mountain range called Horeb, and Sinai is the tallest mountain there. And when Moses was up there, God gave him all the instructions. He was up there 40 days and 40 nights. So God gave him all the instructions for the tabernacle and for all of the furniture of the tabernacle. And what he said to him was, make it exactly to the pattern, because it's a replica of the tabernacle or temple that is in heaven. So all of this stuff that he's having them make is identical to what's in heaven. And that's why God said, don't mess up on this. Do it exactly as the instructions that I gave you in the dimensions. And one of the main purposes for the Ark of the Covenant was that it was a place where God would meet with his people. The whole tabernacle, which is a tent, the tent in the wilderness, the whole purpose of that was that it was a place where they could serve God, where they could make sacrifices, but it was a place God wanted to dwell with his people. He didn't have to. He could have just stayed up in heaven, but he wanted to. In Exodus 36, it says, then wrought Bezaleel and Aholiab, and every wise-hearted man in whom the Lord put wisdom and understanding, to know how to work all manner of work for the service of the sanctuary, according to all that the Lord had commanded. So what it's saying right there is these were regular guys. They may have been skilled, but God gave them special wisdom. So it was really God, through the Holy Spirit, who was building this. I want you to think about this. This Bezaleel, think what he did in Egypt. He made bricks out of straw and mud. He's going from making bricks to making the furniture of the tabernacle. And even he's the one who made the Ark of the Covenant, which really represents the throne of God. It's 45 inches wide. If you look at your picture, you can see that. 45 inches wide, 25 inches deep, and 25 inches tall. And if you'll notice, there are 4 rings of gold and poles that are covered with gold that go through that. And the poles are never, ever to be removed. But this Ark of the Covenant was in a place in the tabernacle called the Holy of Holies. And in the beginning, that is where God met with Moses. Thank you. That's where God met with Moses to communicate with him. And he also told him to make 2 cherubims of gold that were facing opposite each other, and their wings were raised and shadowing over the mercy seat. And the mercy seat was what you might call a lid. Everything was gold, inside and out. Everything was covered with gold. So I'll tell you one thing, this thing was so heavy to carry. Gold is such a heavy metal. It's so heavy. I just can't even imagine carrying this whole golden thing. But as you can see, the cherubim are facing each other. And this mercy seat represents God's mercy. That's where he would meet with them, in mercy. And once he established the priesthood, then only once a year, and that was on the Day of Atonement, the high priest could go in there. First of all, he had to have made a sacrifice for his own sins, and he would have that blood. And then he would have another sacrifice for the sins of the people. And he would go in there, and he had little bells around the bottom of his robe, and they would tie a rope to his leg, because if the offering wasn't sufficient, he would die. And when they stopped hearing the bells, got to get him out of there. I don't know if it ever happened, but that was the formula there. But that was the Day of Atonement, and the children of Israel were constantly making offerings for their sins. But the Day of Atonement was for all of the sins that they didn't even know that they committed. Thankfully, we're living in an age, not in the old covenant, but in the new covenant, where all of our sins are all paid for by Christ. So we don't have to worry about the Day of Atonement. He covered all of that. And there was a crown that went around the top of the ark, as you can see there. And so when they were traveling, that would keep the mercy seat secure. See, the mercy seat fit down in there, and that would keep it secure, having that crown around there. But the crown also has other significance. So now we're going to talk about the contents of the ark. And there were 3 items in there. One was the stone tablets. Yes, that had the 10 Commandments. And you know, when God wrote the first set, there were 2 sets because Moses broke the first set, which goes to prove that when man has a law, he can't help but break it. But when God wrote that, when you think about it, that is the first and last time that God ever wrote anything. Now, Jesus wrote something in the sand, but we don't know what it was. We know what the commandments are, right? So that was the first time. So that was in there, and that represented, of course, the law. That was the first covenant, and that's why this chest is called the Ark of the Covenant, because the covenant's in there. But then, as time went on, 2 other items were placed in there, and one was the golden pot of manna. So when they were at Sinai, the children of Israel were hungry. And they're like, why did you bring us out here? You know, we're going to die, blah, blah, blah. So anyway, God rained down manna from heaven. And I want to tell you what it says in Psalms about that. It says, though he had commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven and had rained down manna upon them to eat and had given them the bread of heaven, for man did eat angels' food.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's the angels' food.
That's what it says. This is Psalm 78, 23 through 25. Yes. But there was something interesting about this, and this was God showing the people that they needed to be dependent on him. They could only take 1 omer per person. That's a measurement. And they could only take enough for one day. And if they took more and hoarded it, in the morning it would have worms and maggots in it. So they could only take enough for one day. But this is what's interesting. On Friday, because on the Sabbath, they wouldn't be able to go out and collect, they could collect twice as much and it would keep. So you know who's in control there.
Yeah.
So to show God's provision, he had told Moses to take a pot. Let me see, that's Exodus 16. Here we go. And Moses said, this is Exodus 16:32. And Moses said, this is the thing which the Lord commanded. Fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth out of the land of Egypt. Well, you find out later what they actually took was a golden pot. Of course, everything's gold.
Yeah.
They took a golden pot and put the manna in it and put it in the Ark of the Covenant. But what's interesting about it, it stayed perfect forever. And so that's the second item. We've got the 2 tablets, and now we've got the manna, the golden pot of manna. But this is what the manna represents. Jesus said in John 6:32, truly, truly, I say unto you, Moses gave you not that bread from heaven, but my Father giveth you the true bread from heaven. For the bread of God is he which cometh down from heaven, that's Christ, and giveth life unto the world. So that bread, the bread of angels, which fed them in the wilderness, that did give them life. But it was a sign of what was to come. And that's why it was put in the Ark of the Covenant. So Christ fulfilled the law, and he is the bread that came down from heaven. And then the third item is Aaron's rod that budded.
Right.
And what happened with that was this. First of all, this is in Numbers. The people started getting a little rebellious. Well, they were always rebellious and complaining. But Korah was of the tribe of Reuben, and he got a bunch of guys together and said, hey, Moses, you've lifted yourself up, you and Aaron, to be in charge of us. And God's with us too, so why can't we? It says, and Moses heard it, he fell upon his face, because he knew God was going to be punishing these people for challenging his authority that God had given him. I mean, like, they saw him up on the mountain with God. They saw him come down with the 10 Commandments, and they're acting like this. Well, they had a bad end. This is Numbers 16:31, and it came to pass, as he made an end of speaking all these words, that the ground clave asunder that was under them. We're talking about an earthquake here. And the earth opened her mouth and swallowed them up and their houses and all the men that were with Korah and all their goods. They and all that pertained to them went down alive into the pit, and the earth closed upon them, and they perished from among the congregation. Well, believe it or not, right after that, another group of people starts challenging Moses. So God has a formula for this. And this is Numbers 17. I'm just going to explain it to you. He said, we're going to have one prince from each tribe, or, the leader of each tribe, bring their staff, and write the name of their tribe on that staff. And then Aaron's going to have his staff, and he's going to write his name on that. And we're going to put them all in front of the ark. And whichever one blossoms, now remember, these are dead wood.
Yeah.
Whichever one blossoms, that is God's choice. So they laid him up. And this is what happened. The next day, Aaron's rod budded, it bloomed blossoms, and it yielded almonds. Think about this. In one night, A dead piece of wood budded, blossomed, and produced almonds. Then God instructed Moses to put that in the Ark of the Covenant. So that was the third item. And not only did it represent that God's choice was the tribe of Levi and the high priest to serve him, but why did he tell him to put it in the Ark of the Covenant? I'll tell you why. Because it represents Christ's resurrection. So we have the bread coming down, and then we have the law. He perfectly kept the law. And then with the rod, we have something dead coming to life. So this chest represented Christ, and it was a place where God met with them. So next week, we're going to talk about the travels of this ark, where it went, the power that God gave to them when they were respecting this ark, and maybe how it ended up. Okay, so that's my lesson for tonight.